For over a century, a distinctive triangular edifice on 23rd Street has shaped the silhouette of New York. Known as the Flatiron Building, it features a limestone foundation and terracotta facade, with a form so iconic that even youngsters identify it prior to knowing its title. This solitary structure boasts more images captured than nearly any other on the planet. It features prominently in movies, artwork, and commercials. Scholars of architecture analyze it closely, while visitors flock from afar to behold it. Advocates for historic preservation battled for years to shield it from being torn down, and their efforts ultimately prevailed. The edifice endured, yet enduring differs from thriving. From 2019 onward, the Flatiron Building has remained vacant, shuttered, unlit, and in limbo. This narrative explores the fate of a landmark that proves too precious to raise, yet too restricted to rescue. Hook, Variant 3. Prior to the Flatiron Building's creation, the parcel at the intersection of Fifth Avenue and Broadway seemed nearly impractical for development. Geometry posed the issue. In 1811, Manhattan's layout adopted a grid of straight lines, with streets extending east-west and avenues north-south. This arrangement functioned flawlessly in most areas, save where long-standing diagonal pathways intersected the fresh design. Broadway originated as a trail used by the Lenape people, curving along a natural elevation spanning the island. As the grid was superimposed on the terrain, Broadway persisted, cutting across the perpendicular routes at sharp, unconventional angles and yielding oddly shaped triangular parcels at each crossing. Many of those parcels were compact and cumbersome. Builders would erect modest, low-rise edifices on them when necessary, opting for simple footings that avoided complexity. Ambitious high-rises were out of the question. The site at 23rd Street presented particular hurdles, narrowing sharply toward the block's southern tip to just 29 feet across at its apex. Along Broadway, it spanned roughly 190 feet, and, similarly, along Fifth Avenue. All told, the plot covered slightly more than 18,000 square feet, a respectable size until one considered the elongated, tapering form, entirely unsuitable for conventional business purposes. Throughout much of the 1800s, a modest dwelling occupied the spot, viewed as nothing special in worth. Its position held appeal, with Madison Square merely a block away to the north, drawing in entertainment venues, eateries, and lodgings to the area. Still, the lot's peculiar contours deterred substantial investment. Typical workspaces required boxy layouts where fixtures aligned with even surfaces and occupants anticipated uniform interiors. The angular site provided none such accommodations. Transformation arrived in 1899. The George A. Fuller Company, a Chicago-based firm expert in frame-based building techniques, favored steel skeletons over hefty stone load-bearing walls to support a structure's mass. This approach enabled greater heights with reduced resources. In the 1890s, Fuller had constructed some of the Windy City's loftiest towers. Seeking to establish a foothold in New York, they aimed for a headquarters that would boldly proclaim their expertise. Following Fuller's passing in 1900, Harry S. Black took the helm. He grasped the promotional power of striking design. More than mere workspaces, such buildings served as endorsements. A potential patron beholding a bold office for a builder might confidently hire them. Black sought terrain that highlighted the firm's prowess on challenging land. The 23rd Street wedge suited ideally. In 1901, the firm acquired the property. Records from the era omit the exact cost, though subsequent reports imply the sellers took a reasonable price, figuring few rivals would bid on such an unconventional tract. Black wasted no time engaging a designer. The selection was straightforward. Daniel Hudson Burnham, a leading figure in American architecture. He had crafted numerous pavilions for the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, dubbed the White City, which captivated throngs with its blend of imagination and technical mastery. Post-fair, Burnham garnered projects nationwide, merging timeless symmetry with cutting-edge steel frameworks to ensure both elegance and solidity. Clients relied on him for that equilibrium. Upon Black's proposal of the wedge-shaped endeavor, Burnham embraced it eagerly. Elevation wasn't the obstacle. Steel could readily support 22 stories. The footing demanded ingenuity, however, as the site's slender point necessitated spreading the burden uniformly over minimal ground. Collaborating with specialists, Burnham devised a system of robust steel pilings, driven into Manhattan's solid schist layer, channeling forces straight down rather than spreading them wide. The exterior brought further demands. Opting for a French Renaissance aesthetic with tall, elegant lines and balanced classical elements, Burnham specified Indiana limestone for the podium, akin to that in era-defining landmarks. For the levels above, he selected terracotta facing, a durable, lightweight option that could be shaped into ornate details and baked for flameproofing. While terracotta was cheaper than stone, it offered a comparable appearance when viewed from afar. Publications tracking the development started calling it Burnham's Folly, implying the designer had embraced a doomed venture destined for collapse. Detractors highlighted the slender base, warning that gusts battering the lofty sides would generate intense pressures. They feared the edifice could collapse during a fierce gale or tempest. Such doubts made sense at the time. Though the city boasted various high-rises, none had risen on such an oddly shaped parcel. Work commenced in 1901, with teams digging out the groundwork amid debris and backfill until they hit the solid bedrock underneath. Steel pilings were hammered far into the earth, then encased in poured concrete to form a sturdy footing. In the initial stages of 1902, steel supports started ascending. The skeleton grew swiftly, level upon level, soon towering over Madison Square. Burnham supervised each element meticulously. He custom-ordered the terracotta sections to fit his vision. Glass panes were fitted to allow ample daylight while shielding the insides from excessive warmth. A lift accessed every one of the 22 levels. Systems for steam warmth and up-to-date pipes ensured ease for upcoming occupants. The structure debuted formally on October 1, 1902. Doubts evaporated right away. It remained stable. Breezes racing across the plaza failed to bring it down. Rather, they sparked an unforeseen phenomenon, a channeling of air. Currents accelerated as they flowed past the slim front. Ladies strolling the walkway encountered abrupt blasts that hoisted their dresses. Groups of youths assembled nearby to observe. Officers intervened to break them up, allegedly coining the term 23 skidoo. That phrase seeped into everyday U.S. lingo, even if scholars still argue over its true beginnings. Images proliferated instantly. The form proved captivating from all perspectives. Cameras crowded Madison Square to frame the complete wedge shape. Some focused low on the pavement, underscoring how it loomed over neighboring structures. Alfred Stieglitz, a key figure in American photography, produced multiple shots of the Flatiron in 1903. His work elevated it from a mere technical marvel to a muse for artists. Illustrators contributed their takes as well. Edward Steichen rendered misty scenes with the tower shrouded in haze. Alvin Langdon Coburn captured it at twilight when interior lamps shone through the panes. John Sloan depicted it from his workspace overlook, the wedge commanding the plaza. Before long, it featured in more creative pieces than many ancient monuments. The Fuller Company took multiple levels for its headquarters. Other areas went to businesses craving a notable spot. Bookhouses showed particular appeal. The slim rooms fit outfits requiring space for workstations and archives over vast expanses. Rates stayed reasonable for such prime real estate. Tenants snapped it up fast. What was meant as a ridiculous gamble turned into a swift sensation. Burnham demonstrated that a tricky site could support remarkable design. Black received precisely his goal, a showcase proclaiming the Fuller Company's prowess to all who traversed Madison Square. Folks adopted Flatiron Building over the formal Fuller Building label in daily talk. The silhouette shaped its essence. Section 1 of 7, the metal framework enabling the Flatiron Building, emerged as a fresh innovation by 1902. Older high structures depended on heavy brickwork for support. Greater heights demanded broader bases, which capped feasible stature. Lower levels lost usability as walls ballooned. A metal framework operated otherwise. Upright supports and cross-girders built a skeleton bearing all the burden. Outer skins draped over this core, like non-weighty sheathing, freeing builders to reach new altitudes without losing usable areas inside. William LeBaron Jenney pioneered this in Chicago's home insurance building back in 1885. Seen as the nation's inaugural skyscraper, by the point the George A. Fuller Company engaged Burnham, the approach had validated itself across numerous projects. The Flatiron distributed steel uprights throughout its wedge-shaped footprint. Girders linked them, forming unyielding levels throughout. Concrete platforms sat atop the girders. Loads channeled straight down the uprights to anchors in Manhattan schist. The outer skins fastened to the metal but bore no stress. Selecting terracotta for the higher exterior addressed key practical issues. Terracotta weighed less than stone, easing the burden on the underlying framework. It could be shaped into intricate ornamental shapes prior to baking, allowing designers greater creative leeway. Once baked at intense heat, it gained resistance to flames, a critical advantage during times when fires in structures posed ongoing dangers. The bottom 4 levels were sheathed in Indiana limestone, creating a sturdy conventional foundation that conveyed strength and status. Burnham divided the front into 3 distinct vertical zones. The foundation spanned the first 4 stories, featuring limestone cladding and expansive shop windows at street level. From the 5th through the 18th floor, the central portion ascended with terracotta elements, mimicking columns which heightened the structure's sense of height. The top, capped off with the uppermost 4 levels, adorned in elaborate terracotta, and a prominent overhanging cornice that finished the design. Though innovative in materials and building techniques, the arrangement drew from classical balances. Vast expanses of the walls consisted of windows. Commercial towers demanded plenty of daylight inside. While electric lighting was available, it cost a fortune and often faltered. Occupants wanted areas lit by the sun for the bulk of their workday. To optimize sunlight intake without compromising the wall's stability, Burnham positioned the openings strategically. Robust steel mullions segmented every window into numerous smaller panels, sturdy enough to endure the gales at such elevations. The gusts were no exaggeration, with Madison Square as an airy plaza, hemmed in by taller edifices that funneled winds. Air sped up along the slender northern tip of the Flatiron, whipping up fierce blasts near the ground. This spectacle caught the eye of passers-by. Press accounts described moments when headwear flew off unexpectedly. Ladies pressed their hems in place. As noted before, groups of young fellows would congregate to observe the spectacle until authorities dispersed them. Within, the interior plans adapted to the site's odd triangular footprint. Not a single level provided the boxy spaces that many businesses favored. Rather, every story featured elongated, slim hallways stretching from the broader south side to the tapered north apex. Workspaces flanked these passages, each claiming a thin portion of the total span. At the pointed end, compartments were tiny, accommodating just one workstation and storage unit. This unconventional configuration put off certain enterprises. Firms requiring spacious zones for sizable teams struggled to adapt to the wedge-shaped layouts, though some thrived in them. Those in publishing, legal practice, architecture, and similar fields with compact teams viewed the compact suites as ideal. The prestige of the Madison Square location added allure. Rates were modest relative to other contemporary towers. Proximity to transit and dining options proved convenient. The Fuller Company claimed multiple levels for its local operations. Other spaces went to diverse lessees. By 1905, occupancy neared capacity. Proprietors easily secured businesses ready to navigate the quirky arrangement for the cachet of residing in Manhattan's signature edifice. From its 1902 debut, the open-plan floors turned into an instant icon. People navigating the streets referenced it for bearings. Images proliferated. Souvenir cards of the Flatiron flew off shelves in huge numbers. Bookmakers included its likeness in travel guides and promotional materials touting New York's cutting-edge vibe. The wedge silhouette stood out unmistakably, even for those unfamiliar with the skyline. Creatives continued capturing it in oils and lenses across the years. Seasons infused fresh atmospheres. Snow blanketed the clay tiles in winter. Gentle rays bathed Madison Square in spring. Fall evenings bathed the exterior in warm amber hues. Every depiction differed. Light, hour, and perspective shifted its appearance endlessly. Photographers specializing in aesthetics discovered endless inspiration in the Flatiron. Its triumph validated key principles. Primarily, seemingly impractical parcels could yield marvels when guided by engineering savvy. Next, status commanded premiums. Renters shelled out for the Madison Square 23 prestige, quirks notwithstanding. Finally, society embraced daring designs. What skeptics dubbed Burnham's misstep evolved into a symbol, cherished precisely for its unconventional contours. Over the initial 2 decades, it performed precisely as Black envisioned, a showcase for Fuller Company's prowess, a sound investment for proprietors, an emblem of the city's progress for everyone. Tenancy steadied, upkeep stayed manageable. The metal core avoided the upkeep woes of heavy stonework. The clay exterior endured the climate effectively. No serious calamities befell it. Blazes that ravaged various structures across Manhattan left the Flatiron unscathed. Its terracotta and steel framework offered superior fireproofing compared to the wooden frameworks of earlier edifices. Breakdowns in the elevator were infrequent. The steam heating system reliably got through the cold seasons. Like any sizable commercial edifice, it demanded standard ongoing maintenance, but no excessive efforts. Come the 1920s, the Flatiron had become a fixture in New York's skyline. Skyscrapers of greater height sprouted up throughout the borough. Construction on the Empire State Building kicked off in 1929, with its completion in 1931 at a stature of 281 meters. The Chrysler Building topped 300 meters, though the Flatiron stood at just 77 meters, far from the loftiest by then. It held the title of the city's most captured on film. It loomed prominently over Madison Square without sacrificing an approachable human proportion. Its distinctive shape persisted. Section 2 of 7. Over its initial 6 decades, the Flatiron Building brimmed with vitality. While occupants rotated through, it sustained near-full tenancy for much of that span. The businesses claiming space there mirrored the shifts in Manhattan's commerce and the broader transformation of U.S. enterprise. In the opening years, publishing houses led the way. Outfits like the Frank Muni Company claimed several levels. Muni put out periodicals and dailies, among them Muni's magazine, which hit a high of 600,000 subscribers. The structure's slim workspaces suited news operations perfectly. Reporters mainly required workstations, typewriters, and storage for files. Expansive areas weren't necessary. The prestige of the Madison Square 23 postcode lent weight to their output. Design practices for architecture took up offices too. The deliberate twist was that architects could point to their base in one of the nation's iconic structures as proof of their design savvy. The compact rooms ensured seclusion for client meetings, and dedicated meeting areas facilitated pitches and evaluations. Studios for photographers occupied the higher levels. Abundant daylight streaming in via the panes proved perfect for headshots and ad shoots. Being smack in central Manhattan made it simple for customers to drop in for appointments. Certain shutterbugs focused on panoramas from the Flatiron's panes, hawking shots of Madison Square to sightseers and enthusiasts. Legal outfits operated from within. Modest practices claimed individual suites while bigger ones secured whole stories. A shared law collection in the premises benefited numerous renters, who split the expenses to keep it current. The hallway design enabled discreet access to individual suites, a boon for patrons valuing confidentiality. Through the 1930s, the roster of tenants stayed much the same. It drew creative ventures, expert services, and operations chasing a notable locale without needing expansive layouts. The Flatiron couldn't match the raw volume of modern high-rises. What it provided was distinct: personality, legacy, instant appeal. The Great Depression disrupted occupancy trends, yet less harshly than anticipated. Certain enterprises folded, others scaled back their footprints. Still, the edifice retained enough draw that proprietors quickly filled empty suites. During lean periods, leases adjusted to lower rates. Landlords favored smaller payments over extended empty spells. World War II introduced fresh changes. Official bodies snapped up workspaces borough-wide to support defense activities. The Flatiron accommodated a handful of modest units linked to wartime needs. Once peace returned, those quarters reverted to private enterprise. The boom in business after the conflict ushered in fresh commercial renters. Entering the 1950s, the building marked half a century. Its steel frame stood firm. The terracotta exterior had endured admirably, although certain sections called for swaps due to water-induced fractures. The inner workings started revealing wear. Elevator fixes grew more routine. The steam setup continued to function, albeit with waning efficiency against contemporary alternatives. Pipes gave out now and then. Proprietors poured funds into preservation, yet shied from sweeping updates. The finances didn't justify hefty overhauls. It yielded reliable leasing revenue, alongside reasonable care expenses. Sweeping makeovers would have run into millions and potentially forced residents out amid the work. Such hazards didn't warrant the gamble. In the 1960s, the topic of landmark status arose. The city was shedding historic gems at a worrisome clip. Pennsylvania Station, a Beaux-Arts gem by McKim, Mead, and White, fell to the wrecking ball in 1963, amid broad public backlash. That loss ignited fury and spurred advocates to call for safeguards on key structures. The New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission came into being in 1965. Just a year later, the Flatiron Building earned its landmark label. This shield barred destruction and mandated oversight for substantial alterations to the exterior or key inner features. Proprietors couldn't just raze it. Regardless of rising ground values outpacing the edifice itself, the landmark status offered safeguards, yet it came with strict constraints. Any renovations demanded oversight from authorities. Alterations to the exterior faced scrutiny. Property owners were obligated to preserve the outer look, true to its initial blueprint. From a historical conservation standpoint, these regulations were logical. They shielded the distinctive wedge-shaped landmark from misguided decisions by subsequent proprietors, though they curtailed adaptability. Contemporary business spaces increasingly clashed with the Flatiron Building's capabilities. Businesses sought expansive, barrier-free layouts. Digital devices called for advanced power setups and climate control. Central air became essential rather than optional. The Flatiron featured compact rooms, obsolete cabling, and inconsistent cooling. Enhancing these features would involve breaching partitions and installing fresh conduits across the entire structure. During the 1970s and 1980s, certain areas proved tougher to rent out. Big companies seeking cutting-edge workspaces looked to other options. Modest enterprises without needs for top-tier facilities continued occupying units there. Tenant flux varied. Certain periods saw fresh arrivals while others witnessed exits. Managers kept operations lucrative, yet profits narrowed. The structure's symbolic importance remained undiminished. Movies featured it as a quintessential New York element. Images of it graced travel guides, yearly planners, and promotional materials. Painters captured its form, design scholars analyzed its architecture. Visitors flocked to Madison Square just to view it. Among New York structures, only the Statue of Liberty and Empire State Building rivaled its immediate familiarity. Yet renown alone couldn't cover upkeep expenses. Into the 1990s, the edifice demanded urgent care. Its terracotta skin needed major fixes. Minor fissures expanded into serious issues as moisture infiltrated and iced over in cold months, worsening the harm. Certain sections started loosening, posing risks to those on the sidewalks underneath. Protective frameworks enclosed parts of the frontage amid restoration efforts. Within, the lifts required overhauls. The early mechanisms, fitted at the time of erection, had endured almost a century, a remarkable nod to their durability. Still, they weren't immortal. Updated elevators called for contemporary engines, compartments, and mechanisms. The project proved costly and intrusive for occupants. Power and water lines also warranted improvements. The initial electrical setup wasn't built to support the loads from today's tech like PCs, copiers, and assorted gadgets crowding desks. Managers threaded additional wires via current conduits and hallways when feasible, but a thorough overhaul meant exposing interiors everywhere. In the closing years of the 1900s, control of the property shifted multiple times. Every incoming holder during the 1990s took on identical hurdles: a renowned location, legendary style, deteriorating utilities, and restricted options due to its protected status. Leasing revenue held steady, but it fell short of the massive sums required for total renewal. As the 1990s wrapped up, the trend was evident. The Flatiron building enjoyed widespread acclaim on the surface, but suffered oversight behind the scenes. Admirers abounded. Contributors to its restoration were scarce. Postponed repairs accumulated steadily. The issues intensified annually. Section 3 of 7. Entering the 2000s, the Flatiron building confronted fresh obstacles. Today's workplaces required support systems alien to a 1902 construction. Unobstructed layouts turned standard. Organizations desired areas allowing teams of workers to interact freely, sans dividing walls. The Flatiron's slender hallways, flanked by tiny rooms, embodied the antithesis of such preferences. The climate control setup scarcely operated effectively. The vintage steam heating persisted, but noisily, wastefully, and without precise regulation per level. Cooling units tacked on incrementally across years formed a disjointed network yielding inconsistent performance. Certain spaces sweltered in heat waves while others chilled excessively in frosts. Occupants griped often. The power grid struggled with demands from current devices. Rooms brimming with tech hardware, data centers, imaging units, and more electronics demanded extra wiring beyond what existed. Managers extended fresh circuits opportunistically. Though comprehensive updates entailed dismantling barriers and overheads building wide, expenses would skyrocket, Interruptions to renters would mount substantially. The waterworks betrayed its vintage. Conduits from the build's outset had held up impressively, but endurance has limits. Drips multiplied. Flow rates varied unpredictably. A few bathrooms sported appurtenances predating most users. Upgrading the full plumbing setup would have involved tearing into walls across all levels, a project akin to gutting and reconstructing the interior entirely. The elevators, updated back in the 1990s, continued to operate reliably. Yet the sheer scarcity of them posed a major issue. With just 4 units handling 22 stories, employees endured waits of several minutes during peak times. Contemporary office towers provided additional elevators and quicker rides. For the Flatiron, no straightforward fix was available. Adding extra shafts would demand removing vital support components, leaving no space for expansion. In the 1990s, the property transferred to Harry M. Lowe, a leading figure in New York real estate development. MLO recognized both its worth and its complexities. Positioned on 17,000 square feet of prime Manhattan land, the site was valued at tens of millions despite its awkward shape. However, its designation as a landmark prevented outright demolition and a fresh build. MLO explored, transforming it into condos. High-end residences within New York's most famous structure could command extraordinary sums. The spot was ideal, with upper-level vistas encompassing Madison Square and vast swaths of the city. The legacy of history lent an allure that contemporary developments couldn't replicate. Yet the idea quickly hit snags. Any substantial internal alterations needed approval from the Landmarks Commission. Shifting to residential use would necessitate overhauling each floor completely. Partitions would need removal, along with fresh piping configurations, kitchens, restrooms, and all related installations. Elements like hallways, stairs, and select ornamental details would probably require safeguarding. The Commission denied the idea. Their guidelines emphasized upholding the authentic essence of protected sites. Repurposing the Flatiron from commercial to living spaces would alter its core layout irreversibly. Officials pointed out that it had functioned as an office space since 1902, a role integral to its heritage. Such a shift would wipe away that legacy. In the end, MLO offloaded the asset. The finances didn't add up absent the condo option. Rental revenues persisted, but fell short of covering the tens of millions required for system upgrades while retaining office functionality. Subsequent proprietors would confront identical hurdles. By 2005, another purchaser stepped in. Sentiente Group, an Italian firm focused on real estate investments, targeted historic properties for revival. They prized symbols of the past. Their holdings spanned Europe and the U.S. The Flatiron aligned perfectly with their approach. Distinctive design, top-tier positioning, and prospects for enduring growth. In 2018, Sentiente acquired it for roughly $190 million. Despite varying reports on the precise amount, this sum accounted for the land's premium and the structure's untapped promise. The company outlined a careful refurbishment to update infrastructure without compromising historical integrity. Early surveys uncovered issues far graver than anticipated. The terracotta exterior showed fissures in numerous spots. Moisture had seeped in via tiny fissures over years, corroding the underlying steel skeleton. Certain beams exhibited rust damage. Fixes entailed disassembling and swapping out facade panels level by level. Internally, every utility demanded total overhaul. Electrical wiring, water lines, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, all woefully obsolete. Bringing things up to date involved bearing the framework and reconstructing the guts. All while keeping the outer skin intact. The effort proved intricate and protracted. Preliminary cost projections hovered at $50 million. As deeper probes continued, figures climbed to $80 million, then $100 million. Ultimate projections indicated a full-scale revival. might surpass $150 million. Combined with the acquisition cost, the overall outlay neared $350 million. Undeterred, Sentiente pressed on. They engaged an architect and engineering team, secured approvals, and established a timeline. Construction was slated to start in early 2019. Notices went out to all occupants, requiring them to vacate during the overhaul. The company promised reintegration post-completion. Come March 2019, the structure cleared out. Final businesses boxed up and relocated to interim sites. A few intended to come back. Others seized the chance for sleeker quarters in modern complexes. For the first time since 1902, the Flatiron fell silent. Scaffolds enveloped the exterior. Teams tackled the terracotta repairs. Each segment underwent meticulous review. Damaged parts got flagged for substitution. Progress crawled. Artisans labored to replicate the 117-year-old originals in hue, feel, size, down to the finest detail. It required several months to locate vendors capable of crafting exact duplicates. Meanwhile, crews started dismantling interiors in areas that weren't critical to the structure's core. They stripped away aged partitions, revealing the underlying metal framework. Obsolete electrical conduits were pulled out, along with sections of rusty plumbing. The blueprints specified fresh installations tailored for contemporary standards, yet seamlessly integrated with the landmark's heritage elements. However, by March 2020, only 12 months into the project, the COVID-19 outbreak swept through New York. Progress on the site ground to a halt. Employees were furloughed, shipments of supplies got backed up, and authorities halted all but vital building work for an extended period. The Flatiron overhaul was put on indefinite pause. The crisis's fallout rippled well past the construction zone. Visitor numbers in the city plummeted. Madison Square, typically buzzing with sightseers snapping shots of the Flatiron, turned ghostly quiet. Property prices for commercial properties tanked as businesses shifted to virtual operations. Workplaces that were once indispensable now seemed dispensable. Interest in prime midtown offices vanished. The Sorrente Group plunged into turmoil. Its headquarters in Italy was already burdened by heavy borrowing prior to the crisis. Stay-at-home orders amplified the strain. Earnings from property holdings nosedived. Lenders started demanding repayments. Come August 2020, the Italian holding company declared insolvency. The Flatiron found itself mired in bureaucratic uncertainty. All upgrades ceased. The property sat vacant. Protective netting continued to shroud its exterior. Control of the owner shifted to Italian court oversight. Lenders battled for claims on holdings. Prospective purchasers weighed if the Flatiron was viable amid its tangled obligations. Burdened by such regulatory and monetary complications, delays stretched from months into years. The tower loomed unlit. The city's signature edifice devolved into its starkest symbol of neglect. Out-of-towners kept capturing its image, though the shots now captured barriers and frameworks rather than a vibrant icon. A structure that had endured 117 years fell not to age but to market forces. Section 4 of 7. In the era before Sorgente's acquisition, a string of proprietors recognized the Flatiron's promise, yet everyone failed to turn it into a moneymaker. Incoming holders brought ambitious schemes that inevitably unraveled. The math stayed constant. Restoration expenses outstripped potential earnings from leasing floors. Turning it residential promised the highest payoff, though the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission vetoed such shifts. Harry M. Lowe pioneered the condo strategy during the late 1990s. He envisioned high-end residences fetching millions apiece. Positioning in Manhattan's core seemed promising, but regulators ruled the switch would erode the site's architectural legacy. The ruling stood unchallenged. M. Lowe lacked any path to overturn it. A subsequent proprietor explored transforming it into an upscale inn. Lodgings within a famous structure might fetch top dollar. Visitors flocked to the Flatiron anyway, so accommodating them overnight aligned with promotion. The idea had appeal, but it collided with familiar barriers. Repurposing workspaces for guest suites demanded substantial alterations. Officials were bound to dismiss those proposals, too. In the interim, it functioned as commercial realty, but the roster of occupants evolved. Established businesses demanding updated facilities departed. Modest groups on tight finances took over. Certain levels went to emerging ventures and arts-focused outfits, prizing the prestige over conveniences. Additional stories remained unoccupied for stretches. Rates stayed modest to retain renters, insufficient to bankroll the necessary overhauls. Occupants forking over standard fees anticipated steady cooling, swift lifts, and robust broadband. The Flatiron delivered zero such features. Proprietors held pricing down to fill space, ensuring receipts fell short of thresholds for thorough upgrades. This bred a self-reinforcing loop. Neglected upkeep accelerated decay. Worsening flaws deterred premium lessees. Reduced cash flow squeezed funds for fixes. The decline built steadily, inexorably. Around 2010, the clay exterior demanded urgent care. Multiple tiles had detached, prompting municipal mandates for shielding. The framework spanned pedestrian paths encircling the site, guarding against harm from loose fragments. Intended as short-term, it lingered for an extended span while holders deferred expensive exterior work. Within, glitches mounted discreetly. The power grid strained under modern demands. Blackouts afflicted various levels. Occupants lodged grievances. Managers applied stopgap measures, sidestepping root problems. Conduits dating to 1909. The structure from 1902 wasn't built to accommodate the constant power demands of computers, servers, and similar gear. Meanwhile, the HVAC setup became more and more erratic. Intense summer warmth transformed the top levels into sweltering spaces. Come winter, certain workspaces felt chilly, even with the heating operational. To cope, occupants resorted to personal heaters and fans as a workaround for the building's deficient setup. This approach wasn't a fix. It signaled the system's shortcomings. Skepticism rippled through the real estate sector when the Sorrente Group acquired the property in 2018. The price tag was steep. The anticipated overhaul expenses were massive, and the unforeseen ones could balloon even further. Yet Sorrente brought expertise in tackling challenging landmark sites, taking on ventures deemed unfeasible by others. Backed by funding from their Italian headquarters, they appeared equipped for triumph. Post-acquisition assessments uncovered the true extent of the challenges. The exterior demanded comprehensive fixes beyond mere patches. Entire portions of the terracotta required outright substitution. Underlying steel exhibited rust that called for remediation. This entailed erecting scaffolding encircling the whole edifice and tackling it, level by level over months or even years. Although the metal framework stayed intact overall, it warranted thorough checks and upkeep. Specialists evaluated each girder and support. Where rust appeared, it involved abrasive cleaning and fresh coats of paint. Certain parts could demand strengthening. Over 117 years of weathering from dampness and fluctuating weather had taken its toll. Fortunately, the groundwork held firm. The original deep steel pilings anchored into Manhattan's bedrock continued to perform reliably, a standout positive amid a lengthy roster of fixes needed. The lower section required no attention, but all levels above did. Sorrente crafted an intricate revival strategy. The initial stage focused on the exterior, erecting scaffolds, scrutinizing every segment, swapping out compromised areas, and servicing the metal structure through cleaning. The next phase targeted upgrades to power and water systems, including complete rewiring, fresh piping, and updated fittings. Stage 3 introduced a state-of-the-art HVAC able to deliver steady climate control across all floors. Phase 4 swapped in quicker, more efficient elevators. The final stage reshaped internal areas for adaptable workspaces, all while safeguarding period features. Planners projected the full endeavor to span 3 to 5 years, as previously mentioned. Expenses were forecasted between $50 million and over $100 million, varying with any surprise issues surfacing mid-project. Sorrente lined up funding from its Italian overseer, plus banks optimistic about a well-handled revival of such a landmark. By March 2019, everything was set. Approvals in hand, teams on board, timelines set, occupants moved out, and the structure vacant for the first time ever. Scaffolds started climbing the front. Teams dove in. Initial advances looked promising. Terracotta sections were delicately detached, inventoried, with flawed ones flagged for renewal and sound ones prepped and warehoused for later fitting. The internal steel framework came into view for the first time since 1902. Inspectors reviewed it closely. Much of it proved sturdier than anticipated, despite spots needing care. Within, teardown progressed in off-limit zones. Outdated infrastructure was stripped away. Routes for new installations were readied. Power hubs were emptied, primed for contemporary gear. The labor was messy, noisy, and labor-intensive. Still, it adhered to the plan in those opening weeks. That changed in March 2020 when the pandemic brought it all to a halt. New York City locked down, builders were dismissed, sites citywide fell silent. The Flatiron became one of countless initiatives stalled by the health emergency. What was meant as a brief intermission dragged on for months. Once work restarted, restrictions on crew numbers and protective protocols hampered the pace. Global deliveries of supplies got postponed or scrapped. Logistics unraveled. Timelines lost all relevance. Yet for Sorrente, the financial fallout from the crisis outstripped the slowdowns on site. Their holdings in Europe and the U.S. saw drastic income drops. Eateries, shops, and workspaces shuttered. Occupants withheld payments. Asset worth plummeted. A firm that looked secure in 2018 grappled with cash shortages by summer 2020. Sorrente's Italian parent already shouldered heavy borrowing pre-crisis. Lenders, tolerant during prosperous periods, turned demanding as earnings tanked. They pressed for settlements. Funds were insufficient. In August 2020, Sorrente Respa sought bankruptcy protection in Italy. A U.S. subsidiary of Sorrente owned the Flatiron building, drawing it directly into the Italian bankruptcy case. An Italian court exercised control over the firm's holdings. Creditors submitted their demands for payment. Prospective purchasers started hovering, evaluating if they could snag the structure at a bargain from the estate in liquidation. Efforts to revive the overhaul never truly picked up again. Occasional tasks persisted here and there, yet lacking consistent resources and direction. Advancements were negligible. The protective framework lingered in place. The structure remained unlit. New York's premier photo subject halted in time, stalled from advancing or reverting to its prior state. Section 5 of 7. The COVID-19 crisis didn't merely halt the Flatiron refurbishment. It reshaped the fundamentals of office property in New York City altogether. Businesses that formerly insisted on in-person workspaces for all staff found that working from afar outperformed expectations. Conferences shifted to virtual platforms. Files moved to digital storage. Output dipped less severely than executives had anticipated. This shift triggered swift repercussions. Organizations, once occupying full levels of commercial towers, started contracting their presence. Certain tenancies expired without extension. Additional ones got reworked for reduced square footage. Appetite for central Manhattan workspaces plunged. Property managers, citywide, observed empty spaces, climbing to highs unseen for years. For the already vacant Flatiron, the impact varied, but proved equally ruinous. Its worth hinged on future leasing revenue. With the market crumbling, a polished-up Flatiron would face challenges attracting renters ready to cover rates matching the upgrade expenses. What was already a tough financial picture in 2019 turned nearly unfeasible by 2021. Visitor traffic, the other vital pillar of the Flatiron's appeal, plummeted too. Madison Square, usually bustling with global tourists, cleared out. Eateries and lodgings shuttered. Survivors limped along with slashed earnings. The prime spot, a core asset for the edifice, diminished when crowds vanished. The Italian insolvency process stretched across 2020 and 2021. Judges handling the matter sought to dissect Sorrente Group's holdings and allocate recoveries to claimants. The Flatiron accounted for a hefty share of the asset's worth, yet posed a major burden too. Acquirers would inherit not just the property, but the obligation to complete the fixes. Lenders vied for leverage. A few pushed for a quick auction, even undervalued, to reclaim some funds promptly. Others contended that patience could let the sector rebound, boosting the price. The tribunal considered the arguments but delivered scant rulings. The proceedings bogged down in procedural quagmires. All the while, the edifice hung in limbo. What began as short-term barriers evolved into enduring fixtures, meant initially to shield passers-by amid exterior upgrades. They now merely shrouded the inert site. Municipal rules mandated their retention pending facade restoration. Yet amid the courtroom strife, funding for fixes evaporated. Metaphorically, one might describe the structure as locked mid-dismantling. Certain areas exposed down to the framework, while others sat pristine from 2019 tenant days. Workstations lingered in spots, storage units brimmed with papers. It resembled a scene where the workforce stepped out for a break and simply never returned. Safeguarding the site grew challenging. A deserted tower in prime Manhattan drew the unhoused seeking refuge, taggers eyeing walls and daredevils chasing excitement. Managers brought on security to monitor the grounds, though round-the-clock vigilance over 22 stories cost a fortune. Barriers sealed select doorways against intruders. Officials intervened, too. The buildings department slapped on citations for ignored maintenance. The clay exterior kept crumbling. Additional sections fractured. Debris hazards mounted. Authorities warned of penalties absent resumed labor. Still, amid the insolvency, nobody held firm power to compel action. Architects observed the saga with mounting concern. As a pivotal early high-rise icon in the U.S., the Flatiron's architectural legacy was immense. Structures worldwide echoed its daring design, merging utility and aesthetics on tight lots. Permitting its decline spelled tragedy, not just for the city but for worldwide design heritage. Advocacy organizations probed options for involvement. The National Trust for Historic Preservation flagged the Flatiron as an endangered site. Local groups assessed the feasibility of a fundraising campaign to rescue the structure, yet the immense funding needed proved daunting. Raising $100 million or beyond via contributions seemed out of reach. Ultimately, rescue would depend on a wealthy private purchaser possessing both substantial resources and a commitment to the future. A handful of prospective acquirers performed thorough investigations. However, each withdrew upon reviewing the financials. The expenses of purchase, full restoration, and the risks surrounding swift occupancy, post-completion, all combined into a formula that failed to yield viable profits, particularly for those expecting solid returns in a timely manner. By 2022, conditions had settled into the most unfortunate stasis imaginable. Improvements were absent, yet catastrophic decline was also avoided. The edifice endured, as did the scaffolding, while court battles lingered. Occasional talks between would-be owners and the bankruptcy tribunal yielded no results. The Flatiron building, transformed into a timeless emblem, stalled in stasis, neither advancing nor vanishing. As visitors flocked back to New York with the revival of tourism, they still gathered at Madison Square. They snapped photos of the icon as before, though now those shots captured the surrounding scaffolds and blockades. Souvenirs in adjacent stores depicted the Flatiron in its prime. Silent on its present plight, the divide between perception and actuality was profound. Regional publications issued updates every several months, chronicling the ongoing stagnation. Every piece essentially repeated the narrative, varying only minor specifics. The structure remained vacant. The insolvency proceedings lingered unresolved. No refurbishment efforts were underway. Interested parties observed from afar, but offers stayed absent. The account remained, grimly unchanging. In 2023, fresh obstacles emerged. Certain lenders in the insolvency process claimed the extended holdup was eroding the property's worth. The more time the building spent unoccupied, the tougher it would be to attract occupants afterward. The Manhattan commercial real estate sector wasn't rebounding as hoped by enthusiasts. Hybrid and distant work arrangements persisted in popularity. Numerous firms had slashed their physical workspace demands for good. Fresh discussions kicked off among the court, lenders, and possible stakeholders. A faction of debt holders pushed to slash the sale price to draw committed suitors. Detractors resisted, insisting that undervaluing the asset would shortchange Sorrente's creditors. The judge reviewed the debates and considered paths forward, yet implemented scant firm steps. During 2024, word spread of a coalition of local real estate firms banding together for a possible acquisition. Their strategy apparently centered on wrapping up the upgrades and repurposing portions for hybrid purposes, blending workspaces with venues for arts or learning. Such alterations would need clearance from the Landmarks Commission, though initial dialogues hinted at receptivity to innovative approaches that safeguarded the landmark while enabling financial viability. As of early 2025, when this account was composed, no agreement had materialized. Control rested with a bankruptcy-managed body in Italy. Talks persisted. Prospective purchasers weighed possibilities. Municipal authorities levied fines. Advocacy organizations monitored closely. Meanwhile, the Flatiron building lingered in silence, its panes unlit, its halls deserted. New York's premier symbol ensnared in its most protracted uncertainty ever. Section 6 of 7, the Flatiron building's desolation, underscores a core irony in safeguarding historic sites. It earned official safeguards due to its profound architectural and societal importance. Designation as a landmark aimed to secure its endurance. Paradoxically, those very safeguards imposed limitations that rendered commercial viability nearly unattainable. Demolition is forbidden, yet meaningful updates to contemporary standards prove exceptionally difficult. The financial demands are unforgiving. A rehab costing over $100 million demands robust leasing revenue to offset it. Even in ideal scenarios, the Flatiron's positioning and renown could support high-end office leases. Still, it falls short of what today's businesses seek. Flexible layouts are unfeasible, owing to the site's wedge shape and rules enforcing original hallway configurations. Cutting-edge systems would need retrofitting into a pre-digital era design, predating central HVAC, computing, or advanced wiring. Assuming those hurdles were cleared, occupancy demand stays questionable. The aftermath of the pandemic has reshaped New York's premium office landscape irrevocably. Firms now operate with reduced footprints. Telecommuting has solidified across sectors. Empty rates in elite Manhattan properties have climbed. Rivalry for lessees is fierce. The Flatiron would vie against contemporary structures providing all its deficiencies, from flexible designs to superior amenities, at similar or discounted costs. One possible way out was converting it to residential space, yet the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission has repeatedly turned down those proposals. The rules aren't capricious, they're there to safeguard architectural heritage against exploitation for financial gain. Since 1902, the Flatiron has served as an office tower, and that ongoing role forms part of its legacy. Repurposing the insides for living quarters would wipe out that legacy. The irony intensifies. The toughest safeguards end up posing the biggest danger. Without income, a structure inevitably declines. Legal protections might block teardown, but upkeep demands ongoing care. Care demands funds. Funds stem from practical occupancy. When rules block viable operations, decay sets in gradually. Various U.S. cities have grappled with comparable dilemmas. Take the Woolworth Building, a pioneering high-rise in downtown Manhattan, which endured prolonged economic woes until a developer transformed its top levels into high-end condos in 2015. Officials greenlit it since the design originally included offices below and homes above, setting a clear example. The Flatiron lacked any such history. In contrast, some urban gems vanished completely. The Singer Building, at one time the world's tallest, came down in 1968, just before laws could shield it. Pennsylvania Station, referenced before, met the same fate in 1963. Those losses jolted societal awareness and spurred the founding of the Landmarks Commission. Today, though, advocates confront a fresh hurdle. Preventing destruction was a triumph. Ensuring financial viability for these sites proves far tougher. Certain specialists argue for updating the guidelines. Insisting on unchanged purposes can doom structures to slow ruin through abandonment. More adaptable policies might enable thoughtful repurposing that honors key historical aspects while fitting into today's marketplace. Critics caution, however, that excessive leeway could tempt investors to gut the distinctive traits that justify protection. Another route involves government aid. Officials might bolster iconic sites via incentives like tax breaks, subsidies, or outright investments. New York runs a few initiatives for landmark rehab, but they fall short of what's needed for a behemoth like the Flatiron. A $150 million tab exceeds what typical public efforts can cover for commercial ventures. Collaborative public-private deals have gained traction. The municipality might assume oversight and team up with a developer, providing know-how and some capital in return for extended leases or joint stakes. Models like this have succeeded in other places, yet the Flatiron's tangled legal and monetary issues have stalled such deals. Occasionally, the notion of turning it into a museum or arts venue arises. Repurposing the Flatiron as a showcase for architecture or city past would carry poetic weight. The edifice itself stands as a relic. Guests could immerse in a turn-of-the-century layout while exploring skyscraper development. Still, museums need reliable budgets. Admissions seldom offset all expenses. Any such scheme would demand a hefty trust fund or steady backing to endure over generations. A small luxury hotel lingers as an abstract option. The Flatiron lures visitors. Allowing them to stay overnight might produce earnings without fully sacrificing its vintage essence. Guest rooms wouldn't need vast open areas. Tight hallways suit lodging nicely. Compact spaces could shine with smart layout. The hurdle lies in proving to the Commission that this shift upholds sufficient authenticity. Perhaps the best bet is a blended strategy, merging varied functions. Ground levels might stay as workspaces or shift to exhibit areas. Midsections could host hotel stays. Top tiers boasting prime panoramas might suit homes, should regulators accept that selective changes are vital for endurance. This multifaceted setup could spread income sources and buffer against market swings. So far, none of these paths has advanced much, as title remains locked in insolvency limbo. The Italian court overseeing Sorrente's holdings won't retain it indefinitely, but it can't offload until lenders settle. For now, the Flatiron looms silent, its path ahead unclear. The past provides cautions alongside optimism. Plenty of structures have outlasted dire threats. Mar-a-Lago, introduced earlier in this account, stared down demolition in the late 1980s. The proprietors struggled to keep the estate viable financially. Wrecking teams were on standby. It endured thanks to an individual who devised a viable approach. Turning it into an exclusive club sparked controversy, yet it produced the income required to preserve the property. Regulation marks the key distinction. Mar-a-Lago avoided the restrictions imposed by the Landmarks Commission. The proprietor enjoyed the liberty to repurpose the site in an economically feasible manner. The Flatiron lacks such leeway. Its safeguards double as its confinement. The twist is that the structure's renown might precisely hinder its endurance. Were the Flatiron less legendary, it might undergo updates or modifications away from public eyes. However, any idea tied to one of the nation's most distinctive landmarks invites scrutiny, discussion, and resistance. Interest groups guarantee that all schemes face thorough review. The Landmarks Commission proceeds with care, aware that its rulings establish benchmarks. Come 2025, the Flatiron building lingered in uncertainty. Structurally, it persists upright, its iron framework sturdy amid prolonged disuse. The terracotta exterior is eroding gradually. The edifice might persist for many years in its present forsaken condition. Yet mere existence differs from vitality. New York's most captured on-camera structure has evolved into a symbol of its inherent contradiction, essential enough to prevent its disappearance, restricted too much for lucrative operations, renowned to the point where changes can't happen discreetly, shielded by statutes that secure its appearance while leaving its destiny unsecured. Its vacancy serves as both sorrow and caution. Legendary sites aren't everlasting. Popularity won't cover upkeep costs. Safeguards lacking practicality lead merely to gradual downfall. Can the Flatiron last through another 100 years? Quite likely. Can it revive as an active structure brimming with activity and intent? That's still unresolved. That divide between safeguarding and true existence stretches between those inquiries. It grows broader annually as the building remains unlit and hushed, anticipating a resolution that always feels out of reach. Section 7 of